Hello, and welcome to Stories from India, a podcast where we talk about myths, legends, and folk tales from India. I am your host, Narad Muni, and I'm a mythological character myself. I have the gift of eternal life and knowledge of the past, the present, and the future. By profession, I'm a traveling musician and a storyteller. So, the way I'm doing my job is by podcast. In this episode, we are doing folk tales again. It's been a while since we did one from Assam, and I've had a listener request for one. So that's what we'll be doing this week. It's an epic showdown between a monkey and a jackal. You might think this is a toss up, because monkeys and jackals are some of the cleverest creatures when it comes to folk tales. But if you have always wondered which one is the cleverer, you will receive an answer this week. We'll see one of them definitely gain an upper hand. I know at the end of the last episode, I identified one of the belligerents as a fox instead of a jackal. Well, I'm a little sheepish about my mistake. I'll explain it later in the show notes. The story begins with a monkey and a jackal. Let's call them Bandar and Shial. I'm just sticking with the tradition of the show to name the characters using words from local languages. Those are Assamese words which literally mean monkey and jackal. As is typical in such cases, the showdown between Bandar and Shial was preceded by actual friendship. Yes, Bandar and Shial were friends. They socialized, visited each other's homes for tea, liked each other's cliched posts on Facebook, and that sort of stuff. The forest that they lived in underwent some changes. They discussed the changes over tea one day. "It's climate change," said Bandar. "I bet it's because all of those cows that the villagers keep." Shial thought it had something to do with the natural variations in the solar cycle. It was debatable whether jackal science was more advanced than ape science. But what was undeniable was that food was getting scarce in the forest. Most prey had migrated away from the forest. Bandar had considered packing up and moving as well. But home prices being what they were, it seemed unlikely that he'd find a cozy treehouse in a forest with abundant food. He had looked up Westimates on Willow.com and MagicBarks.com, the leading home search sites for tree homes. But he decided that he could not afford a new house. Shial had the same concerns. Besides, his kids were in school, and he was a little hesitant to move them to a different school in the middle of the school year. "I think we have no choice except to try to get creative about how we get food," Bandar said. "What if we take seeds from fruits and vegetables and bury them in the ground and water them from time to time?" "What will that do?" asked Shial. "I've seen squirrels do that with nuts and acorns. All it does is to make the nuts and acorns cold." Bandar shrugged. "To be honest, I don't know myself how that will help. I've seen humans doing it. I've never fully understood the purpose. They are always putting stuff in the ground and then pouring water over it for a long time. I never pay attention to them after that." Shial had an idea at this point and shared it. There is another way that we can get food. You know how humans are always walking about with picnic baskets and bundles of food? All we have to do is scare some humans. They'll drop the food and run for their lives, and then we can grab it all and eat it. Bandor thought that this was a fabulous idea. He had long been curious about human cooking, but he had never had the courage to try and steal human food. Shial had a plan that might just work. The key was that humans were scared of loud or sudden noises. Shial and Bandar would stay out of sight in bushes next to the path the humans usually took. At exactly the right time, when a human carrying food was walking between the bushes, the two friends would scream and shout at the top of their lungs. Most likely, the foolish human would drop any food they were carrying and run away. The two friends found an appropriate spot along the path, and then they synchronized their stopwatches. That was a pointless thing to do, because they didn't know when exactly a human would appear on the path. But it seemed like a good thing to do anyway. People in the movies seem to be doing that all the time. They didn't have to wait long. This path seemed to be the superhighway as far as the village was concerned. At exactly the right time, the unsuspecting villager walking on the path got a full blast of animal sounds in stereo. He dropped the basket he was carrying and ran away. Bandor and Shial picked the basket up and rushed away to their hiding spot. Their hiding spot had to be Bandor's treehouse, because the basket would not fit in Shial's home, which was just a hole in the ground. That was unfortunate for Shial, because he could not climb a tree. His mistake was in trusting Bandor. The monkey promised to drop Shial's share down. The important thing now, he said, was to urgently hide the basket in the tree, or the villager would certainly recover his courage and come looking for it. Shial agreed and waited patiently as Bandar opened the basket and examined all the contents with glee. There were a bunch of bananas. These were Bandor's favorite fruit. Shial called out, "Bandor, can you throw down my share? I'm getting hungry here." Bandor replied,
"We are in luck. We've got bananas."
Shial said he had never heard of bananas. Were they some kind of vegetable?
Yes, said Bandar. "Here, let me give you all of them since you have never tried them before."
But that's not actually what Bandar did. The monkey took every banana, ate the flesh, and tossed the peel down at Shial. Truth be told, Shial did not like how they tasted, but he ate them all, just to avoid offending his friend, who seemed to be going bananas about the bananas. Bandor had just sacrificed his entire share of his favorite fruit so that Shial could eat it. Next, Bandor revealed that the basket contained sugarcane. It was the sweetest thing he had ever tasted, he said. But again, Shial silently disagreed with Bandor. The sugarcane that Shial had was in actuality sugarcane that had been chewed to a pulp already by his dear friend. The same thing happened with the yogurt. All that Shial got was the clay pot that had contained the yogurt before Bandor secretly finished all of it. Shial went home thinking what an awesome friend he had. I mean, Bandor had given him the lion's share of everything: the bananas, the sugarcane, and the yogurt. It was true, the food was not tasty at all, but that was probably just human cooking for you. Shial thought nothing further of the incident until a few days later he had the occasion to visit a cousin of his. This cousin offered him a banana. Shial was nauseated at the thought of eating another banana if they were all like the kind he had tried before. He only accepted out of politeness. But the jackal was in for a shock. When his cousin tossed the peel in the garbage and offered him the flesh, Shial's jaw dropped. And when he actually tasted the banana, he knew that Bandor had been up to some kind of monkey business. Just to confirm that Bandor was guilty beyond reasonable doubt, Shial did a bit of diligence. Through friends and family, he managed to find out what sugarcane and yogurt tasted like. The results confirmed it. Bandor had played a dirty trick on him. Shial thought of ways he could exact his revenge. A few days later, when he had perfected his plan, he sat right under the branch of a tree that had a wasp's nest in it. There was enough distance between him and the nest that he was not in actual danger of being stung. But at the same time, he put on a stiff and serious expression on his face, so people could see right away that he was on a mission there, and the mission had something to do with the wasp's nest right above him. Just to be extra sure, he put on a hat and uniform, both labeled the Shial Security Company. Soon enough, Bandor passed by, just as Shial had planned. When he did, he was naturally curious. What was Shial doing here? What was with the costume? It wasn't Halloween, was it? And what was that thing hanging from the branch above him? He had never seen anything like it. No, 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 Shial said. It's not Halloween. You know, food continues to be a problem for us, so I'm doing an extra job to make ends meet. I set up my own security company. Fortunately, I managed to land a contract from the king himself. I'm on duty right now. My job is to guard the king's amazing new drum. And just to clarify, I mean the musical instrument, not a cylindrical container for storing oil or other fluids. Well, that only made Bandor even more curious. He absolutely wanted to try out the drum. The monkey appealed to his friend. You know how much I've told you about my dream to be a drummer one day. I think I'm going to be as famous as Ringo Starr. The jackal appeared to be very reluctant, though internally he was excited that this seemed to be going exactly as he had hoped. The jackal probably deserved a Filmfare Award for this. Eventually, though, he relented when Bandor called in a favor for having shared most of the human food with him. Bandor scampered up the tree and gave the nest a gentle tap. Oh, look, he told Shial excitedly. It's no ordinary drum. It makes a very special noise, like a buzz. Yes, could you excuse me? Asked Shial. I really need a bathroom break. The jackal sneaked off without waiting for a reply. Bandor was suddenly stung in a lot of places by a whole bunch of angry wasps. To him, they appeared to have materialized out of thin air. He was in great pain, and the wasps only stopped stinging him when there was no area left on his body for them to attack. Shial laughed all the way home. And then he got to thinking. This was good, sweet revenge. But it wasn't enough. These things had to be done in threes, because this was a folk tale. I mean, hadn't Bandor cheated him out of three kinds of food? Shial's trick had been the banana revenge. Now next up was the sugarcane revenge. And lastly would follow the yogurt revenge. Besides, if Shial didn't take immediate action, Bandor might think deeply about the incident and realize the deception. Then, it might be harder for Shial to trick the monkey in future. Bandor might even try to take revenge. So Shial planned yet another trick. Again, Shial was guarding something on Bandor's usual morning walk path. What he was guarding was arum plants, which are a kind of toxic plants. But Shial claimed that they were a new kind of sugarcane, commissioned by the king. This sugarcane variety was sweeter than anything else anyone had ever tasted before. And that made Bandor curious again. I guess the monkey hadn't really learned much from the last time his friend was guarding something for the king. Bandor didn't even confront Shial about the drum. Shial was again reluctant when Bandor asked to taste the sugarcane. But again, Shial eventually gave in to his friend's pleas. Bandor hastily gobbled up as many arum plants as he could get his hands on. And pretty soon, he had to stop because he started having a reaction to all this. Bandor had to rush off to the emergency room to seek urgent medical attention.
Maybe I have an allergy,
he hastily muttered to Shial, who was having difficulty suppressing his laughter. A few days later, Shial decided that this was still not enough. And when Bandor realized the double trick Shial had pulled on him, his revenge would be all the worse. So he had to do something preemptive. And it had to be final. Well, if a trick works well twice, there's no reason to think that it might not work again. So Shial put on the uniform of his security company again and stood guard next to an old, disused well. In fact, it had been so long since it was last used that there was a big network of cobwebs all over the mouth of the well. You could call it a well wide web. That served Shial's plan perfectly. So when Bandor wandered along again, Shial claimed that this well wide web was in fact a special chair for the princess, and that he had been commissioned to guard it, even though the king had been very, very upset about the job he had done on the drum and the sugarcane. In fact, Shial said to Bandor, the king suspected you had something to do with the wasp infestation of the drum, and the fact that his new sugarcane plants were all gone. But I convinced him otherwise. Bandor pleaded with Shial to please let him try out this special chair. Finally, Shial let him. And when Bandor tried it, he realized a moment too late that maybe he was way heavier than the princess. He went crashing down to the bottom of the well. Unable to climb out, despite being an expert climber, Bandor drowned. And that was the end of him. And the evil psychopath of a jackal went home to his family, whistling a tune without a shred of guilt about him. And that's how the story ends. A few thoughts on the story. Shial and Bandor are the Assamese names for a jackal and for a monkey. Interestingly, the Assamese word for fox is the same. It's Shial. That sort of explains how I got the animal name wrong at the end of the last episode. The original story had the jackal taunt the monkey at the end of each revenge. And yet, the monkey was foolish enough to fall for Shial's trick again. After the heist that the two friends pull off together, the two seem to have entirely switched intelligence and gullibility. Now, the betrayal by a close friend may explain Shial's personality transformation. But it's a total mystery what exactly caused the monkey to become so gullible. Not once or twice, but 3 times. That's all for now. In the next episode, we'll go back to the Ramayana again. We'll conclude the Sugriv-Vali fight and then move on to the next phase in the search for Sita. If you have comments or suggestions, or if there are particular stories that you would like to hear, please do let me know by leaving a comment or a review on the site sfipodcast.com or tweet at sfipodcast. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook. Be sure to subscribe to the show to get notified automatically of new episodes. A big thank you to each and every one of you for your continued support and your feedback. The music is from purpleplanet.com. That's purple-planet.com. I'll see you next time.